From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight. A prominent Muslim group in the US has called on Congress to scrap Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's appearance. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy invited Modi to address the joint session of Congress on June 22nd. The Council on American Islamic Relations has asked members of Congress to stay away from the session if Modi makes the speech. In a letter to congressional leaders, CARE Director of Government Affairs Robert McCaw said Modi's speech would send the wrong message. It would mean the oppression of Christians, Muslims, Dalits, Sikhs, and other religious minorities is not an issue for the U.S. Congress. He said Modi's anti-democratic policies, such as suppression of critical journalism, are against what the U.S. Congress should be recognizing. McCaw said his organization will call on the members to boycott the joint session. The largest Muslim advocacy group in the U.S. also called for India to be designated as a country of special concern. It noted there have been widespread human rights abuses against Christians, Muslims, Dalits, Sikhs, and other religious minorities. CARE also called on the Biden administration to cancel a planned state banquet honoring Modi. Modi's visit to Washington will be the first since Biden took office in January 2021. New York City is taking legal action against more than 30 counties, reportedly preventing the relocation of hundreds of migrants. In the lawsuit filed Wednesday, lawyers for the city said it is facing a flood of asylum seekers beyond its capacity. They said the city wants to provide temporary shelter for them outside city limits. At least 30 counties in the state have issued emergency declarations and executive orders banning the intake of migrants. Since last summer, 74,000 asylum seekers have sought refuge in the city, which has set up more than 160 sites to house and support them. New York City is seeking the court to declare executive orders issued by the counties null and void. It has also asked the court to prohibit counties from taking steps to enforce the orders. Researchers at the Allen Institute for Brain Science are teaming up with Amazon Web Services to map the human brain. The Seattle-based Research Institute said mapping the brain will pave the way for better diagnosis and treatment of mental disorders. It said it will help treat Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases as well. Mapping brain cells means collecting and studying huge amounts of data. The National Institutes of Health will fund the project using Amazon Web Services technology. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning services, cloud computing will analyze and store large and complex data from 200 billion human brain cells. The study is being led by Ed Lane, a senior research scientist at the Allen Institute for Brain Science. He is supported by a network of neuroscientists from 17 institutes worldwide. Former U.S. President Donald Trump said Thursday he has been indicted on criminal charges in connection with the retention of classified government documents. Trump, who declared his candidacy for the 2024 presidential race, railed against the legal action on his social media platform, claiming, "I am an innocent man." The Washington Post reported Trump faces 37 counts over classified documents. Charges include the illegal retention of government secrets, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Special Prosecutor Jack Smith was appointed in November to lead the investigation into classified documents. He was found to have more than 300 documents with classified markings at his Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence in Florida. Prosecutors are also investigating allegations that Trump prevented federal authorities from accessing and retrieving those documents. Smith is also investigating the former president's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Trump has already been indicted in New York City, where he is accused of falsifying business records in 34 cases. Those charges relate to the payment of hush money to porn actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 presidential campaign. A story on nearly 49,000 people dying from gun violence in the US in 2021 comes with details after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Nearly 49,000 people died from gun violence in the US in 2021, according to a report from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions. That means every 11 minutes, at least one person died as a direct result of gun violence. The report also shows over 26,000 people committed suicide with a gun. It notes that firearms were the leading cause of death among children and adolescents in 2021. Firearms also cause more deaths than COVID-19, car accidents, or cancer. The study also showed Black people in the US also disproportionately were affected by homicides involving firearms. They are nearly 14 times more likely to die from gun violence than their white peers. The study calls on policymakers to do something about the easy access and availability of firearms. A group of researchers have rejected the notion that morality in society has declined over the past 7 decades. They said the evaluation of morality has remained largely unchanged over the past 70 years. Adam Mastriani, a psychologist at Columbia College, and his collaborator Daniel Gilbert have concluded the perception of a moral decline is an illusion. The study published in the leading scientific journal Nature says people's assessment of the morality of their contemporaries has not changed over time. Researchers explain that this means the perception of moral decline is false. Scientist Leanne Young, director at the Morality Lab at Boston College in Massachusetts, said pessimism about human nature is quite common. The authors explain the tendency to assume decline is related to factors such as distorted memory. Mastriani suggests the illusion of moral decline could have important social and even political consequences. 2 Pakistani courts on Thursday extended the bail of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. More than 150 cases have been filed against him since he was ousted last year. Khan appeared in 2 courts in the capital Islamabad Thursday. His lawyer, Sher Afzal, said Khan had been granted bail in 8 cases related to counterterrorism until June 19th. Gohar Khan, another lawyer, said another court had extended bail in 9 other cases. Khan's arrest last month sparked nationwide protests in which a mob set fire to the residence of a senior army commander. This led to a widespread crackdown threatening Khan's political survival and that of his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI party. Late Wednesday night, the Inter-Services Public Relations, the military's public relations arm, vowed to tighten the use of law around those involved in the violence. Thousands have already been arrested and some face trial in military courts. Local and international human rights groups have condemned military tribunals for protesters. Khan denies inciting violence and says the attacks on military targets were black operations to give authorities a pretext to arrest him and ban his party. A UN agency on Thursday said more than 13.6 million children in Sudan are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. UNICEF said the effects of the ongoing violence continue to threaten the lives and futures of families and children. The organization has appealed for $838 million to address the crisis. It said basic services have disrupted and many health facilities are closed or even destroyed. Sudan has seen weeks of violence between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces. A total of 297 children were evacuated from the Maigoma orphanage in Khartoum and moved to a transit center. Mandeep O'Brien, UNICEF representative in Sudan, said millions of children remain at risk due to ongoing fighting. According to the United Nations, more than 700 people have been killed, including 190 children, and 6,000 others are injured. More than 1 million people have been displaced, and more than 840,000 have sought refuge in rural areas. And more than 250,000 people have crossed Sudan's borders. The US and Saudi Arabia have called on European states to take back ISIS fighters and their relatives. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, after a 3-day trip to Saudi Arabia ending Thursday, pledged $148 million for stabilization efforts in Iraq and Syria. He made the announcement at a ministerial meeting of the International Coalition Against Islamic State in Riyadh. The meeting was co-hosted by Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Its goal was to raise $601 million for a stabilization fund. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan said it was disheartening and absolutely unacceptable that some wealthy countries had not repatriated their citizens who traveled to Iraq and Syria to join ISIS. ISIS' self-proclaimed caliphate in Iraq and Syria was declared defeated in 2019. Thousands of fighters and their family members continue to be held in detention centers and informal camps. U.S. commanders have warned this could lead to a resurgence of ISIS. Foreign governments have allowed only a small number of the fighters to return home, fearing security threats and domestic backlash. 2 Palestinian women living in Israel are suing an airline for humiliating them and for their racist treatment. A lawyer from the Racism Crisis Center filed a request for $45,000 in compensation from Arkia Airlines. According to the lawsuit, the women who wore a hijab were questioned about their private lives when they arrived at Tel Aviv airport on April 13th. After learning they had spent some time in Gaza, Israeli security subjected them to a rigorous check. They were asked to remove their hijabs and even their hairbands. When the women refused, Israeli security conducted a strip search, resulting in one of the women breaking down in tears. Later in flight, they were also insulted by passengers, according to the lawsuit. The women discovered security forces had removed the contents of their carry-on luggage, including medication. The Racism Crisis Center noted this was not an isolated incident. It claimed Palestinian citizens of Israel regularly report profiling at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. According to reports, an Uyghur student arrested in 2017 for using a virtual private network, or VPN, was sentenced to 13 years in prison in China. A police official said university student Mehmood Memtimin bypassed official censors to access illegal information. The official said Memtimin was lodged at Tumshuk prison in Kashgar's Maralbeshi district. Memtimin was a computer science student at Xinjiang's College's Institute of Information and Technology in Urumqi. Many Chinese citizens use VPNs to circumvent censorship but have rarely been arrested or punished as severely. Independent researcher Jean Boonen said Memtimin was forcibly detained by police in his hometown of Kaklik. Boonen collects records of Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities who have been detained. Before we end today's news segment, I would like to extend a special request. It takes more than 55 hours of work per day to produce this news segment for you. It brings news with a unique and critical perspective, and you can find it only on here, on Muslim Network TV. Sound Vision is a not-for-profit organization which produces it. And just like PBS and NPR, we depend on your donations. Please visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now or click the link below to donate. And that's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.